What's going on, guys? My name is Steve. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to why are British place names so hard to pronounce. This is absolutely true in my experience as an American on this journey, looking at different place names within the UK. I must say that the British place names do tend to be hard to pronounce on average. Now, obviously, there are going to be some place names within the US that are very hard to pronounce as well, but just from my experience, it does seem like place names in Britain do, for some reason, tend to be a little harder to pronounce. Now, I'm not actually sure if Brits would also feel the same way. Maybe you guys in the UK are so used to pronouncing words in a certain way that us in America aren't necessarily used to pronouncing them the same way. And so maybe these place names are easy for a lot of you guys and they're just harder for outsiders. Or maybe you guys also feel the same way that a lot of the place names within the UK are hard to pronounce. I don't know. Let me know in the comments, guys. You know, I will say that the area I'm from actually has quite a number of hard to pronounce place names. If I was to show you guys some of these place names, I know for a fact the majority would get them wrong because they're just so hard to pronounce. Even for people in my area, they were hard to pronounce. So in America, we definitely have hard to pronounce place names as well. But just from my experience, it does seem to be that British place names are a little harder to pronounce on average, at least as an American. And so that's why I want to check out this video today. I want to find out why are British place names so hard to pronounce. Now, before we get started, guys, I want to say going into this, I'm guessing because he's in front of this sign of this town or city here, I'm guessing he's going to say this is one of those hard to pronounce place names. I'm going to go ahead and tell you how I would pronounce this going in to see if I'm correct or see if it's pronounced completely different. The only way I could see this town being pronounced as an American, the way I speak, is Grimsby. That's how I would pronounce this. Grimsby. Grimsby. You know, usually when you have the BY, it's usually B, Grimsby. But I don't know, guys. Enough of my rambling. Let's go ahead and dive in and check out why are British place names so hard to pronounce.
British place names can be tricky to pronounce.
Take this place. Looks simple. But what if we told you it was pronounced Grimis?
No.
We'd be lying. It's Grimsby.
Oh.
But other places can be...
Okay. Grimsby. Okay, I got that. Good. All right. I would pronounce this Bicester, or Bicester probably. But I bet it's Bicester. I bet there's, I don't know. I have a feeling it's Bicester and there's actually no H there, but I don't know why I think that, but I just have a feeling that's Bicester. Which as an American, the way we pronounce things, I think our pronunciations of things tend to be like what you see is what you get. There's less complication with the words. It's just like, if you see an H, you're probably going to pronounce the H. If you don't see an H, there's probably not going to be an H. But I have a feeling this is going to be Bicester. I can't tell what this one is.
Genuinely fiddly for foreigners.
And tourists who get it wrong risk being imprisoned or killed.
In today's programme, we're going to ask why British place names are so hard to pronounce.
It didn't tell us what that one was.
Is there an and coming?
No, I'm done.
Welcome to Map Men.
We're the men.
And here's the map.
Map men, map men, map men.
There are difficult to pronounce place names all over the world.
California has Zizix, Slovenia has Ptuj, Greenland has...
Kekertarsuit.
Even Welsh natives struggle with this one.
And tonight we can expect to see heavy showers spreading from the west into... Wales.
But deliberately hard to pronounce names invented for promotional purposes like aside,
show off.
British place names cause more trouble than most.
How do you know how to pronounce that? Man, that's crazy. I know that's that long Welsh place name, right? That town or city. It's just like, that is incredible. Like, how in the world people couldn't even pronounce it. There's no way. I could practice that for days and I wouldn't be able to pronounce that.
Because they often look straightforward, but contain nonsensical phonetic traps that are impossible.
They do look straightforward.
Try this one.
From.
Go on, say it out loud.
From. That's how I would pronounce it. From. But I'm gonna. Well, no, I'll see.
In your room or on your train.
From.
Wrong, it's not Frome.
Frome, it should be blitheringly obvious, is pronounced Froome.
But if you did say Frome, don't worry, you're in good company. Frome is officially the most mispronounced place name in Britain, and that's according to a proper survey.
Excuse me, could you mispronounce Froome for me?
Portsmouth.
That'll do. There's nothing more fun than laughing at tourists who don't know how to say something properly simply because they're from a different country and could never reasonably be expected to have predicted a local pronunciation that contradicts the basic rules of language.
So we've...
Thank you! Yes, I'm coming into looking into places in the UK. You guys have a completely different accents, different ways that you pronounce things, and I'm coming in as a newbie, and a lot of people expect me to just understand right off the bat how to pronounce these things the way that people in the UK do. And it's like, that's impossible because my accent and the way I was brought up, dialects, the way I was brought up pronouncing things is completely different in a lot of ways. And so, and it's the same thing. If you go from any country to another country and you look at the place names, you're going to pronounce them with the way that you're used to pronouncing words and syllables and phrases. And it's just.
Created the perfect travel agent's itinerary for maximising tourist humiliation across the country.
Starting in Biaulio,
Bewley,
head over to Rampisham,
Ransom,
then down to Mousehole.
Mousehole,
Next, travel north up to Towcester,
Toaster,
then a quick jaunt to Gotham.
Wait, no, Toaster, really?
Gotham,
Followed by a stop in Quernmore,
Quormer,
before finishing up in Alnwick.
Alnwick, which is near Newcastle.
There's no
Or, as the
L?
people from the city itself say, Newcastle.
When will they learn? As you can hear, no letter of the English alphabet is safe from being pronounced any of dozens of different ways.
Including not at all.
Thankfully, there are some general rules you can stick to, and because we're nice, we'll help the un-British amongst you through a couple of basics.
Cester is pronounced stir.
Leicester, Worcester, Gloucester.
W at the start of the final syllable is silent.
Norwich, Berwick, Southwark.
ER is pronounced R.
Berkshire, Clerkenwell, Hertford.
Wow. See, that's interesting. Berkshire, Clerkenwell, and Hartford. Okay, and Hertfordshire. See, it's even the sure. I know that I know that what I see as Shire is usually pronounced like sure, right? I know that one, right? And I know this is Hertfordshire, but I would pronounce this Berkshire, Clerkenwell, and Hertfordshire. And I know that's not how you. That's just like, if these were in the U.S., that's how we would pronounce them. Like, because we just, I do believe there's something to that. Like in the U.S., we pronounce, I'm noticing that. And I've been noticing that, like, we pronounce words just the way we see them. Like, you know, if there's an ER, we're going to pronounce it burr, we're just and then if there's an S, you get what I'm saying. But it's so interesting how that changes, you know, between countries, you know, speaking the same language, but for some reason there's just a complete change in the way we pronounce certain phrases, words, syllables, you name it.
Hertfordshire.
But before you get too reassured, for every rule in the English language there are always exceptions, such as the cester in
Cirencester.
the W in
Sandwich.
and the sound in
Oh, this is disgusting. Oh, sorry, Berkhamsted.
which is in Hertfordshire.
The only way to
What?
be absolutely sure of pronouncing British places correctly is to live here long enough to learn every single one of them one at a time. Sorry.
So who were the complete anchors that invented these rules?
It's time for an English lesson.
To make an English language, you start with the base of Germanic Anglo-Saxon. Mix in a healthy dash of Old Norse, a huge dollop of Norman French, and just a barely detectable hint of Celtic. Trust me, it'll make all the difference. Stir it up for hundreds of years until the vowels really start to shift. Then English.
Excitingly, by looking at a map of Britain today, we can clearly see which invaders influenced our language where by plotting the origins of British place names. This marvellous, messy, multicoloured map shows which languages different British place names belong to and is a living history of our early settlers and subsequent invaders.
That's
The
amazing.
oldest place names here are of Celtic origin. This is where you'll find all the place names with words like Tre, Loch, Bryn and Aber,
Such as Aberystwyth, meaning the mouth, Aber, of the river Istwyth.
which coincidentally is exactly where we find Aberystwyth today.
Celtic languages were once spoken all across the British Isles, but are now reduced to a small minority of mountain dwellers. And that's because low-lying Middle England Brits turned out to be more worse at resisting invading armies.
First up were the Romans, who brought in Britain's Latin influences.
Like the rumba?
No, like boring Latin. Anywhere that ends in castor, cester, chester, or xeter was a Roman fort, from the Latin word castra, meaning Roman fort.
But the Romans didn't stay long, so although their naming system was long-lasting, the actual names they used weren't, which is perhaps unsurprising when we learn they used names like Castra Exploratorum and Belgic Oppidum.
Which was sensibly renamed Braintree.
Next, in light pink, we have the biggest group, Germanic Anglo-Saxon.
Any place containing the words Ham, Hurst, Lee, Bury, Ford, Port, Mere, Stead, Tunstall, Wick, Witch, or Mere are of good old Anglo-Saxon origin and massively dominate southern England.
Like Buckingham.
Or a low-lying area of land belonging to an Anglo-Saxon called Bucker.
Perhaps the most
Oh, it goes
upheaving thing to
backwards
happen
like
to
that.
Britain's place names was the Vikings, who swept in from Scandinavia in the 9th century, committing brutal crimes including pillage and the renaming of small to medium-sized settlements.
You can tell a place was named by the Vikings if it ends in Thwaite, Thorpe, Kirk, or B.
Such as our old friend Grimsby. Named after an important Viking called Grim, famed for his infectious positive energy, Grimsby literally means Grim's village.
Really?
Oh.
We're all familiar with these common settlement suffixes, but what's so striking is how clearly this map of Viking place names reflects the extent of the Viking invasions. You can practically see the exact location of the Danelaw dividing Viking and Anglo-Saxon England without needing to draw it on with thick red pen.
Wow.
Following all these invasions, Britain was littered
That's
with place
wild,
names
man.
that originated in different languages and accents. But the final thing that would make its place names truly unpronounceable was time.
Over hundreds of years, locals who were too busy to pronounce all the syllables in Cester reduced it to stir to save time. But they couldn't read or write, so the spelling stayed the same.
And while the English language has continued to gradually...
What's that? Hold on, what was that? Beep, boop, boop. Man, it's so interesting. Yeah, it's just like the locals, they took the original word and they would, because of the accents, I guess, and the dialects, they would just, over time, it just sounded different and then it just stuck. And I think that's what happened, when we crossed the pond, so to speak, and came to the U.S., to the New World, just a lot of these words, over time, the accents and dialects changed and then the words were pronounced differently. And so all of a sudden you're stuck with what we are now, where Americans and Brits pronounce a lot of things differently because we were separated by that huge body of water.
And while the English language has continued to gradually evolve, our place names haven't, resulting in a language landscape littered with phonetic booby traps.
But what about Froome? Which linguistic group is responsible for Britain's so-called hardest place name?
Unusually for a place name in England, Froome is from a surviving Celtic word, frama, which means fair, fine or brisk, probably describing the flow of its lovely river.
It's not really surprising that the oldest language in these islands is the one that's drifted the furthest from pronounceability.
So don't forget to join us for the next episode of Map Men.
All right, guys, this was interesting. So basically, British place names, in a nutshell, are so hard to pronounce because so many different groups of people invaded Great Britain over time, and these groups of people used their own language, obviously, to name their towns, cities, and villages within their territory. All right, that makes a lot of sense. And now today, we kind of have the remnants of those original place names. And since you no longer really have the territories kind of divided like they once were, the Romans no longer basically own the Roman fort, so to speak. The Celts don't really have their territory here, and the Vikings up here, and the Anglo-Saxons down here. Since we no longer see that, it's all one group of people, Great Britain, with the English language now pronouncing these words that originally stem from different languages and cultures and whatnot. So that honestly makes a lot of sense. And although you can't really see that as much in the US, we obviously see so many of our place names come from England. New Hampshire, for example, right? Is just one of many. New York. I've since learned that a lot of these place names, and it makes total sense. The British people came, settled in, these new areas in the U.S., and they named these places, from places that they were from or whatnot. Totally makes sense. And that's just a little bit. Obviously, here in the U.S., you also see a little bit of this from like Spanish influence coming in from the South, and so I can kind of see this a little bit in the U.S., but not to the extent, because Great Britain is a much smaller landmass than the U.S. So you're going to feel it more, because you had a lot of groups coming into this relatively small landmass, and so you're going to kind of feel the difference when you're seeing these different place names more, because they're going to be closer together, if that makes any sense, than what I'm going to experience here in the U.S. But guys, this is amazing. I love these guys. They're so funny, and they just make learning things like this a lot of fun. So I'll probably check out more from them in the future. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for stopping by. Please click that like button. Feel free to drop your comments or suggestions about this video or others. And don't forget to subscribe to continue to follow me on my journey to discover my British and Irish ancestry. Until next time, guys, peace.